Accidents happen. Be there when the calls come in. It's back-to-back episodes of Rescue 911. Next on Discovery Health Channel.
This is 911. Do you have an emergency?
Today on Rescue 911. Who can you trust when domestic violence escalates?
The windshield in the van was completely shattered. She seemed extremely frightened.
Victim Services helps the family through their emotional trauma.
Unless someone will press charges, there's nothing we can do.
Plus,
The police department in Austin, Texas, has created a unique counseling program that provides immediate on-scene care whenever an incident of domestic violence is reported. This story is not a recreation. It's a look at a family violence team as they provide crisis intervention on a weekend in late May of 1994.
Police department, open the door, please.
Hello.
Evening. Is your boyfriend here? Who's been beating you up? What's his name?
Still a long ways off. Say something.
And there's no reason in the world you should have to put up with this sort of abuse.
Victims are very much in denial of what's going on in the situation, and they don't want to look at what's really happening.
Somebody called in and said that he was beating you up. We get here and it's pretty obvious that somebody has beat you up. If he's been beating on you, the law says we're going to take him to jail. This has happened before. She's got the phone number to her and stuff. She's had problems before.
We know that you're scared, and we know that people are afraid to file charges, so we do that for them, so it's not your fault, okay? So what's his name? Spell that last name.
Many times they're saying, I don't want them arrested, I just want them to stop. And it's very simplistic thinking because it's not going to happen.
If they continue in this pattern, if they don't get some help, they could end up dead.
Melinda went back to her apartment the next day and refused any further help. When we continue.
The windshield in the van was completely shattered. She seemed to be extremely frightened that something was going to happen to them back at the house.
Tonight, remarkable true accounts of people who survived deadly injuries. Don't miss all new back-to-back episodes that will make you cringe. Cheating Death, tonight on Discovery Health Channel.
911.
May 31st, 10:58 p.m. Another call for help comes into the Austin police.
Got very angry and threw something at my car and it broke the windshield.
Do you live there too?
Yes, I do.
3616 from a family disturbance that just occurred. Complainants waiting at the 7-Eleven.
41-year-old Jan Barstow had driven to a nearby convenience store and called for help. Officer David Espinoza responds.
The windshield in the van was completely shattered. She seemed to be extremely frightened that something was going to happen to them back at the house. We went with her straight over to their home.
Yes.
The man Jan shares a house with had broken her windshield during an argument.
We've been out to this address a number of times, and each time there's been some sign that there's been violence, but unless someone will press charges, or unless we can determine it's what's happened, that someone has assaulted someone else, there's nothing we can do. Well, finally, she produced a photograph of what has been going on. And I mean, it's not pretty at all.
Victim Services counselors Patty McDavid and Ray Ramirez arrived to talk to the family.
Go ahead. Well, our window of opportunity is at the time that they are totally emotionally engrossed in the incident that's occurred.
I don't know exactly how to explain what happens. He goes into rages, or he just gets angry and wants to force everything to be his way.
Sterling was in the bedroom crying.
And Sterling is who?
My baby brother.
That's usually when he gets angry, is when Sterling cries.
And after about an hour of crying, of hearing the child cry, I came downstairs to find out what was going on. And she says, well, nobody wants to watch the child, and she was working on the computer.
Leah started yelling at Mom and then he told her to get out, and they stormed downstairs, and he slammed this door.
She did what she normally does, and that's she gets in the car and she drives off and leaves everybody here.
And she started to back out, and Leo went out there with Sterling, and he got a rock, and he told her to open the door, or he was gonna break a window.
I had a rock in my hand, and I threw it.
The kids were crying. They were trying to stop him.
I'm not a violent person. I have a very, reputable position at work and everything.
It happens a lot, but it never really gets this bad. They usually don't. Mom usually doesn't get hurt very often.
I thought it was getting better until tonight. And I don't know what set it off.
That's not an issue because the important thing is that you're taking the steps now to try to protect yourself.
Am I supposed to go pay rent someplace else while somebody's living in this house and I'm paying for half of it? That's not fair either. Of course this is wrong. Of course I shouldn't be throwing rocks. But I also shouldn't be sitting in this car.
You're afraid of what?
I'm afraid he'll come back and hurt one of us because he'll be mad.
What makes you think that?
Because he's left before.
Mm-hmm.
And he always comes back, and then they fight some more.
When he comes back? Everybody was a victim in that household. And when I say that, I mean not just once, over and over and over and over.
We want to go ahead and talk a little bit about how you're feeling and what you would like to have happen. You know, what you would like to see your mom do at this point, as well as what she's prepared to do to help keep you guys safe.
I'm glad something finally did happen, because this has happened before. He's very violent sometimes for the littlest things.
Throwing things, throwing me against the car, or throwing me on the ground, or grabbing me by the head, or choking.
One other time that he got all mad at my mom, and they went outside, and he threw her on the ground, and he started hitting her and beating her up.
I kept waiting for the black eyes and broken bones, but this is going to lead to something. I mean, this is going to lead to just straight death without that in between if it doesn't stop.
Jan.
The next morning, Ray follows up with a phone call to Jan.
Just being able to get a hold of them is refreshing because a lot of times the next day you can't find them. Sometimes they're at the jail bailing the person out.
Ride the razor's edge between life and death with the people who walk it every day. Trauma, Life in the ER, tonight at 7 Eastern, only on Discovery Health Channel.
Hi, how are you today?
Jan's father, Bob Barstow, accompanies her and her 13-year-old daughter, Jana.
Do you want to try to get into safe shelter? Do you want to go ahead and do protective order?
I don't necessarily want to keep Leo away from his son or us. He's fine with us most of the time.
She was bailing out already.
He doesn't know why he does these things.
It's kind of like holding somebody over a cliff and feel your grip losing, thinking this person could die.
I think it's harmful for a child to have a parent that they see every day suddenly disappear from their lives.
But it's not nearly as harmful as seeing outbursts, violence, and assault. If this keeps going, those rages are going to be so terrifying to that child that he's not going to know whether he can trust him or not either. And he feels that.
These fights scare Sterling so much.
And the other kids as well. So what I would suggest is that you try to get out of there.
I've lived out of boxes before after the first time. It's hard on us. And the kids don't deserve that.
I could rent a house for you.
Oh, Dad, that drains y'all so much.
Well, baby, you're my daughter. Doesn't make any difference.
I told him last night the reason I'm in situations like this is because of the kind of parenting that I got, and this is the man.
I taught her everything she knows.
Yeah.
It's very likely that Jan's pattern started at an early age when her mother and I were still living together, and we didn't know how to handle and communicate things between ourselves.
Dad's been through lots of counseling, and now he's being like the father that I wish I had when I was growing up. So I appreciate that, Dad. I don't know how to solve the problems because I never saw my parents solve them. They just argued and my dad left. And with Leo, he'll blow up or he'll argue, and I'm the one that runs to the car and leaves.
My bedroom was next to y'all's, Dad, when we were kids. I heard Mom screaming out, "Bob, don't, you're killing me." And it scared the daylights out of me when I was a kid. I couldn't come over and do anything. And that's when I got a piece of paper and I wrote on it, "I hate you, I hate you, I hate you." And it was about you, because I'd never felt it before. So now I'm giving it to the kids. But I can't let that happen, because they'll find relationships to resolve this problem they're going through.
You see a generational domino effect that seems endless. Right at that moment was an opportunity to go ahead and interrupt that cycle of violence. He's going to be out of jail. He could be getting out of jail right now. So the best time to do it is right now.
I will not let this go on again the way that I have allowed it in the past. I will file every time there is something like this. I've seen the value in it now. And I need to do that for my own protection and for the children, so I'm clear about that.
Jan decides to file the police report needed to investigate a past incident.
Thank you.
I want them to have a supportive family, one that nurtures, one that doesn't cause fear and fright. We don't have that right now. Leo wouldn't have been taken away if he hadn't have gotten out of control.
The bear.
The only part where I'm responsible is for not having them take him away the first time, because that showed him he could get away with it.
Leo was released from jail that afternoon. He pleaded guilty to an assault charge for throwing the rock. Jan and her kids went to live temporarily with Jan's father.
It feels good to stop it. There's a place of love in my heart for Leo that's as deep as it ever was. I think it's the most loving thing I could do, by having him have to look at himself honestly instead of being part of his cover-up.
I hope Leo goes through counseling, and I hope my mom goes through counseling with him, and that maybe they won't live together, but they'll still be friends.
This matter of passing things down from one generation to another doesn't stop until someone takes the responsibility to learn a different pattern. And if Jan doesn't, she's going to fail her children.
2.5 months later, Jan and her children moved to a new house of their own. A restraining order prevents Leo from having any contact with them.
I had always thought that battering occurred among minorities and people with less money and less resources. Then when I went to the Battered Women's Center, there were these women. They were just like me.
A lot of times, affluent, educated individuals cover things up a lot more and tolerate it because they don't want the social stigma.
Hey, it has to be a solid one.
Victim services, I'm so glad they're there. If I had known that they'd be as helpful as they are, I think I'd have stepped in earlier.
Helping people who are being abused is the kind of cause that everyone should take up. Because if we can ensure that everyone's safe, it makes it a much better world to live in, doesn't it?
Next, step inside the command center where the calls for help are answered and meet the real-life heroes who save lives. Stay tuned for another episode of Rescue 911, next on Discovery Health Channel. Real life, medicine, miracles.